Nice jumper, Martha.
Thank you. It's understated, isn't it?
It's very understated. You look like a highlighter.
You're not the first person to say that, Mark.
For those Americans listening, jumper is the British name for sweater, isn't it? Americans don't use the word jumper referring to an item of clothing.
Well, they do refer to an item of clothing because I keep wearing my jumpsuit. You know
Right.
that?
Oh, yeah.
I've got a denim jumpsuit and everyone keeps, oh, nice jumper. And I think I'm not wearing a jumper. So they call jumpers sweatshirts and jumpsuits jumpers.
I don't know. Two countries separated by a common language and a lot more. I'm Mark Stone in the Trump 100 studio in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Martha Kellner in Los Angeles. And on the podcast today, two massive media companies go head-to-head to buy Warner Brothers in a media shakeup that will have a massive impact on the film and TV industry.
Yeah, and guess what? Donald Trump's involved in that, or isn't he? The Supreme Court is also poised to expand the president's powers, which could see the structure of the federal government fundamentally changed.
But first, a new White House national security strategy is giving us an insight into how President Trump views the world and the US's place within it. Is this America fundamentally shifting the established world order? So, Mark, on Monday, the UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper was in Washington, D.C., meeting with the Secretary of State Marco Rubio in the US for the very first time. And this meeting comes at an interesting moment. Marco Rubio, of course, the National Security Advisor. And you've spent the weekend, lucky you, pouring through a national security strategy, which was released by US officials. And it is a pretty incredible document.
It is 33 pages. The first couple are written by President Trump, signed by him. It's a kind of forward to the document, which is it's sort of part of the furniture of every administration. When they come into office, they release a national security strategy document. It's written by someone within the administration, and it kind of outlines their vision, their roadmap, and for decades and decades, it has by and large been a document that you could kind of expect for American foreign policy. Yes, depending on whether it's Republican or Democrat, it kind of shifts a little bit. But the direction of travel is kind of as you might expect. Well, not this time. Fundamentally different. In these 33 pages, spelt out in black and white, it is America's stunning and swift foreign policy revolution. And, you know, despite watching actually much of what is in this document kind of play out, Martha, over the course of the past year as we have, it is still remarkable to see it written down in a policy document. And I think the stuff, I mean, we were talking about it on our bureau meeting earlier on today, weren't we? The stuff about Europe is perhaps the most surprising because it outlines how Trump's America effectively seeks to destroy the European Union as an entity. It's kind of ambivalent at best about NATO, and it seeks to disrupt politics across the continent. It openly offers endorsement, encouragement for nationalist right-wing parties in Europe, the AfD in Germany, Reform in the UK, the National Rally in France, who, incidentally, have all kind of borrowed tips from MAGA as they have tried to make themselves more popular in their own country. So it's a fascinating document. It should be a clarifying moment for European governments as they kind of recognize the reality that America as an ally has gone. They are on their own.
I've heard some people describe it as a far-right pamphlet, this document, and there's this standout line in it which says, Europe's economic decline is eclipsed by the real and more stark prospect of civilizational erasure. It goes on to say that the larger issues facing Europe include activities of the European Union and other transnational bodies that undermine political liberty and sovereignty. It is extraordinary language. And you'll remember back in February when J.D. Vance went to the Munich Security Conference and remonstrated with European leaders. And ever since, European leaders, we've seen them come and go in the White House, very deferential to Donald Trump. But this hasn't had any effect on this document, it seems, because it is raking European practices over the coals.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I'll pick out a couple of bits from it because I think they're worth reading out. It says that if present trends continue, it's talking about trends in Europe, if present trends continue, the continent will be unrecognizable in 20 years or less. At the rate Europe is going, it says that it will be far from obvious whether certain European countries will have economies and militaries strong enough to remain reliable allies. And that is why, I mean, it's effectively talking about mass immigration. And it's saying that mass immigration is destroying Europe, that institutions like the European Union are encouraging mass migration, which is exacerbating the destruction of Europe. And that is why Trump's America is calling for parties that are against that reform, as I say, National Rally in France, AfD in Germany, to form the governments in Europe. So in that sense, Martha, it seems to me to be such an extraordinary departure where, I can't remember a time when America and the American government was actively trying to overthrow governments within Europe. But that's kind of what's happening here.
Europe very much cast as the enemy. You would not know from reading this document that Russia had launched a war against a sovereign nation. There's barely a mention of Russia in it, no mention really of Chinese cyber hackers. And as you might expect, this document is delighting people in Moscow. There was a post from Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president and prime minister, on one of his social media profiles. And he said, the strategy unexpectedly echoes what we have been saying for a year. Security must be shared and sovereignty respected. He goes on to say, now a window of opportunity for dialogue has been opened. This undermining of Europe is fantastic for them.
It's absolutely extraordinary stuff. Elsewhere in the strategy, the White House says that America will, quote, shift away from the burden of the Middle East, seeing the Middle East now as, quote, a source and destination of international investment. It goes on to say that in the Western Hemisphere, and remember, Trump is all about spheres of influence, and he sees the Western Hemisphere as his sphere of influence, and that stretches from the Arctic in the north right the way down to the countries of South America. The Western Hemisphere, so the document says, America should pursue a policy of enlist and expand, restoring American preeminence. And in Africa, it says that America's Africa policy should be on trade and, quote, not providing and spreading liberal ideology. So it's the spelling out of a foreign policy change that has been a complete 180 from previous administrations, stretching back literally decades. And it's also a starkly different document. Well, it's clearly a starkly different document from that published by Biden 3 years ago, and is also a shift from the one that Trump published in his first term.
It does seem to suggest, Mark, that for all the fawning that these European leaders have been doing in their visits to the Oval Office, state visits, calling Donald Trump daddy, bowing to his tariff demands, at every turn, President Trump has shown in plain sight what he's doing, what he intends to do, and where his alliances really are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In real time, America seems to be deserting Europe. And Donald Trump, who is advised by some ideologues within his inner circle, people like J.D. Vance, he has torpedoed the transatlantic relationship. His administration is openly undermining the institutions which have kind of bound Europe together since 1945. But more than that, he seems to be seeking to dismantle the European Union, to divide the continent, to undermine Europe and Europe's elected governments. And that seems to be a key foreign policy objective of the Trump administration. It is absolutely extraordinary. And yet the leaders of these European governments continue with their fawning, their polite diplo language, either because they can't see the writing on the wall or because they judge that they have no alternative, that they need America. The problem, Martha, is that Trump's America seems to have concluded that Europe doesn't matter anymore. It is not an investment opportunity. It is not a priority.
I am just surprised that there's not been more widespread reaction, condemnation of this document than there has been. There's not really been that much outrage, has there, given what it does spell out?
Yeah, I think two reasons for that. The first is that as we said on the episode, I think last week, we talked about how we kind of normalize stuff, and
Yeah.
we see stuff and think, oh well, there we go again. And actually, it's kind of the boiling of the frog slowly. It's happening. And you kind of miss it sometimes. But also, what some commentators have been saying is, look, these national security strategy documents, they come out with every administration. They're kind of policy wonk stuff. They don't really mean anything. That may well be the case for some administrations. But as we've been saying here, I do think that this is almost a cementing of what we've been seen happening in real time over the past 9 months. So I don't think you can dismiss it as the work of some ideological policy wonk deep in the State Department. Maybe Donald Trump hasn't actually read the whole document, but it clearly aligns with his views and the views of those around him.
Away from foreign policy strategy, a big shakeup in the media and entertainment world is on its way, whatever shape and form that takes.
Yes, at the end of last week, it was announced that Netflix had struck a deal to buy key parts of Warner Brothers Discovery in what would be a massive land grab by the streaming service to totally dominate the film and television industry as well.
Yeah, Netflix's bid was $72 billion, so that's around £54 billion. It would have meant that Netflix owns Warner Brothers Studio and the streaming operations, which includes HBO Max and the film studios that are responsible for blockbuster hits like Harry Potter. It also includes things like the rights to the DC Comics films, so Batman, Superman, and the Joker. And before the weekend, it seemed like a done deal. Then on Monday, Paramount, another mass media conglomerate, they launched their own bid.
Yeah, a hostile takeover, as it's known, with Paramount offering an all-cash bid of $108 billion, $26 billion more than Netflix. And the kicker is that the offer from Paramount isn't just for the studio and the streaming services, it is for the whole company.
Yeah, so that would include CNN, the news network, which is owned by Warner Brothers. Netflix's deal with Warner Brothers would have had CNN split off into a separate company, but Paramount's deal could have massive consequences in the cable news industry if they were to buy CNN as well, because Paramount already owns CBS, which is another major news network here in the United States. So this could potentially be the start of a merger between CBS and CNN. And as ever, there is a major political element to this too, because David Ellison is the CEO and founder of Paramount Skydance. That is the parent company of Paramount. His father, Larry Ellison, is the second richest man in the world and, wait for it, a close friend of Donald Trump's. It was only a few weeks ago that CBS totally overhauled their news division and brought in a conservative commentator, Barry Weiss, as the news chief of CBS News. And that was a move which was celebrated, commended by the president.
Not only this, though, the Paramount bid is backed by external funders as well. The Qataris are part of the bid, and so too is PIF. That's the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund, an investment arm of the Saudi state. And here is the real Trump-related kicker, because deep inside the Paramount hostile bid takeover, there is a company called Affinity Partners. Guess who that's run by?
I know this.
Jared Kushner, son-in-law of one Donald Trump. So the logical concern is that should the Paramount deal be successful, people with close ties to the administration, the son-in-law of the president, as well as Gulf states, will have an influence over established media here in the United States. But of course, I hear you say the regulators will surely regulate this and decide whether or not it's a good thing or not. Well, yeah, they would if they weren't too also now aligned with the president. The chair of the Federal Communications Commission is a Trump ally.
This is a serious issue, isn't it? Because in lots of countries, when democracies slide towards being autocracies, you see them take over various parts of the media. And, that may not be happening here, but it is a concern when you see the son-in-law tied to, such a major potential media deal. And Donald Trump was asked about just this, about Jared Kushner's involvement in the bid at a White House roundtable on Monday.
Do you support the Paramount bid for Warner Brothers that came in this morning?
About it.
You spoke about Netflix last night, saying you have concerns about them.
I know the companies very well. I know what they're doing, but I have to see what percentage of market they have. We have to see the Netflix percentage of market, Paramount, the percentage of market. I mean, none of them are particularly great friends of mine. You know, I want to do what's right. And so very important to do what's right.
Paramount deal is supported by Jared Kushner, Mr. President. Would that impact your decision?
If Paramount is, no, I don't know. I've never spoken to him about it. He's really trying to work on Gaza. I think his primary thing is Gaza.
Yeah, effectively saying, I don't know anything about this. Well, we will see. Look, you mentioned when countries slide into autocracy. In some countries, when they take over the media companies, you see men in fatigues with machine guns walking into the news studios and taking them over that way. That's not happening here. It's happening in a slower way. It's happening in a different way, maybe. But it does look like it is still happening. And that's pretty remarkable.
And whichever way this deal goes, it will be certainly one of the largest media deals in history. It will shake up the established TV and film norms, and it will have global implications.
Now, Martha, in keeping with the theme of a president looking to expand his power, interesting stuff coming out of the Supreme Court today. Remember, the Supreme Court is now weighted towards Conservatives thanks to appointments made by Donald Trump. They now appear poised to make it easier for Donald Trump to fire independent government officials. That's despite a 1935 law that should protect independent government officials from political pressure.
Yeah, this case stems from Donald Trump's bid to fire a Federal Trade Commission member without cause. The White House sacked Rebecca Slaughter back in March without raising an issue about her conduct or her performance. And Slaughter sued the administration. An appeals court overturned her sacking. But it now looks like the Supreme Court is going to rule against her. That would be them ditching an old convention, nearly a century-old convention.
Yeah, the president has for months now tried to fire various independent officials. You can add Rebecca Slaughter to the list of names like Lisa Cook, who is a member of the Federal Reserve Board who was fired earlier this year, only to be reinstated in October until her Supreme Court case is heard. And the president has been vocal in his desires to fire the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, who he says has not been agile enough on interest rate changes.
The immediate practical effects of the court's decision could be minimal, but long term, who knows? The Liberal justices on the Supreme Court say that this is a slippery slope that will make irreversible changes to the independence of agencies that they say need to be independent from the executive to retain the structure of American governance. Mark, thank you as ever, and thank you to you listening as well. We're going to be back tomorrow, but for now, do please write in to Trump100@sky.uk with your questions and comments.
Yeah, and last week we asked you to send us your Spotify Wrapped. We've had loads in. Thanks everyone who's emailed. It's great to get them. Keep them coming. I wanted to flag one in particular. Louise, a teacher from Glasgow, has sent us hers and then went on to say in an email that she sets her school class Trump 100 episodes as homework. Martha, we need to sort out our language, I think, in that case.
That's very cruel, Louise.
Cruel indeed. Good luck with tomorrow's homework. We will be back tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.
See you soon.